We are Mike and Jeannie, and we restore old houses. In 2021, we moved to South Carolina and bought a 120-year-old Victorian house. Follow along as we put the polish back on this Victorian masterpiece. Welcome back to another episode of 1834 Restoration House. It's now October and the weather has changed. It's no longer hot and muggy, and now we're starting to get better weather as far as temperature goes. But yesterday, we had quite an unexpected thing happen.
A major storm. I think you guys call it a gully washer. It's a whole lot of rain for several hours. Enough that the roads started flooding, the yards started flooding, and there's a tree in the back on the neighbor's yard that was pretty tall pine, but has been dead for a while, and it fell over into our yard. So today, we're gonna go help him cut it up.
I'm so excited to show you guys this. The pantry is done and filled. Look at that.
Well, here it is, folks. The complete, finished project of the pantry. Look at how much space I have now. That's gonna be awesome. Can make lots of soups. Could probably do a lot of vegetables too.
We gathered up all of our tools and materials and we went outside expecting to cut the tree up. We got out there and found out the tree was already cut. So our new neighbors apparently had cut it without our knowledge and took it out of there. So that's great. We went over there and chatted with them for a few minutes, and they were super busy, so we didn't get to stay long. But that house was on the market at the same time as this house, and if you remember back, we looked at both of them together on the same day. And that house was featured in episode 23, if you're curious. So we have to do something else. Now, I don't know if you can see this very well, but this is our tool room. This is where we keep all of our supplies, and it's kind of a staging area for the restoration here at the house. When we moved in, the movers brought everything in here and just dumped it, which is what we asked them to do. But we never really took the time to organize this. So today, we're going to see if we can bring some order to the chaos here.
First order of business is to get the stuff out of here that doesn't need to be in a tool room, like our coats and our hats, right here. Oh, and backpacks. It's just a big box. It's not super heavy. It's just a big box full of coats. How can I help?
Well, let's see if we can get this jointer out of here and over there. Go ahead and swing it that way.
You want my end to watch?
Yeah.
You want my end to go in this way?
Swing it that way. Yep.
Okay. Just want to be on the same page.
Yep. There we go. Okay, now go that way.
Go that way. Oh, I just asked if you wanted me to go in there, and you said yes.
Come to me. Okay, now swing if you can. Whoop, stop. We're up against everything.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna have to move this thing here. It's about 500 pounds.
Where is the hand truck?
Okay, put it here.
Put your arm. Okay, ready? Go. We got it.
Yep.
I can't hold this end. Let me get to that side. You're taller, you can hold it better.
Well, we just need to push it back a little bit, so I'm just gonna lift.
Okay.
I'm just gonna push towards you. Okay, that's good.
That worked good. I just stood on it and tilted back.
Yep. All we had to do is just release the pressure.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and put this thing against the wall. right there. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, now we
Does
can.
it cover the vent?
No.
Beautiful. We even got inches, several inches.
Yep, we're doing good. Okay. Okay,
Excellent.
let's take the rest of the grizzly crates and put them on top of that. There you go.
Okay. Oh goodness,
Great.
that one was hard.
Yep. Well, for those of you who have been following us for a long time, you might remember we had a workshop set up in New York. We had a planer and a jointer. That's what all this stuff is here. So we're trying to get it out of the way so we can actually use this room properly. We have a plan to move this thing. It's over 500 pounds. So let's get the floor dolly over here.
Okay.
Get it in position. I'm thinking because it's so heavy, if we push on it here, it won't slide, but it'll just tip. So let's see if we can tip it up. Okay, good, good. Let's put the dolly under. Okay, position it exactly where you want it.
A lot further.
Okay, I've got the machine. Go ahead and move it.
Okay.
Okay, is that good?
Put your foot on it.
Yep,
Right in the middle there.
yep.
Okay.
Okay, you got it?
I got
Okay,
it.
I'm gonna go around and push the other side.
Okay.
Okay, coming up.
Up.
Are we good?
We're good.
I wanna not move this any further than we have to.
Okay.
Okay,
That'll be good. That still gives plenty of room for that
all right.
contraption thing.
Okay, I'm gonna tip back. Nice and easy.
Yep.
Okay, we're up against the window frame almost.
Okay.
Go ahead and take that out if you can. Okay. Easy, easy. Wow.
I'm gonna grab that in and let's put this over there.
Okay.
There we go. Get it out
This
the way.
contraption right here is actually a chain hoist that we built. So when we take the crate open, we can put some chains in here and then we'll attach it to a chain pulley and we can literally lift the machine up off the crate, slip the crate out from underneath it, and then we have a floor dolly that it sits down into, then we lower it down and now we can move the machine anywhere we want to. Well, it seems like things never go as planned around here, and this is no exception. So we came back here and we were going to clean the top deck here of this fireplace, and then the plan was we were going to clean the soot off the bricks. Should be a simple job, right? Well, I started cleaning up here and I realized there was this big pile of soot, and inside that big pile of soot were 2 bricks. Now these bricks had fallen out of the chimney at some point. So, all right, fine, we'll just take the bricks out. But it turns out that the bricks are about 1/8 of an inch, just 1/8 of an inch too thick to be able to slide out the top here. So I've got the hammer drill here set for hammer mode, and I'm going to see if I can cause that brick to kind of disintegrate by hitting it hard with this. And if that works, we can take those bricks out. They'll have to be replaced, of course, but they probably fell down from the top. The crown work on the chimney started deteriorating, and some of the bricks fell in, some of the bricks fell out. So we'll deal with that later. But for now, let's see if I can bust this brick up. Got it. The bricks in the fireplace they angle outward as they come up like that, and there's a shelf on top, and then there's a gap, and then finally the opening up to the flue goes up that way. And there was a ton of coal dust and clinkers up there. So I cleaned those out, and then I discovered 2 bricks, which I mentioned a few minutes ago. We had to use a impact hammer to break those up and get those out. It was the only way because they just didn't fit. So those bricks are gone. They probably came from the top, and we'll replace those later on. Anyhow, so that's all clean now, and we're going to set out to do what we originally set out to do, which was try to clean the soot off of here. So I have some water. I'm just going to spray some on here. I'll just do 1 brick first. Maybe more of a spray there. All right. That's just to moisten the brick and keep the next step from absorbing too much. Now this is a can of scrubbing bubbles. Everybody knows what scrubbing bubbles is. So I'm going to go ahead and spray a little bit on the brick. Let it scrub. If you listen carefully, you can hear them. They sound like Rice Krispies. Look at that, they're just disappearing in sections. That's weird. Okay, I'm going to spray some more on there. Let it work a little more. Now I'm going to take a scrub brush. Get the scrub brush wet a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a scrub. Let's see what happens here. This is really, really heavy, and it may not work. Okay, I'm going to try one more shot here. I've had to give this several applications of scrubbing bubbles, but I'm starting to see some brick underneath. Okay, let's take the sponge and clean that off and see what we've got. Well, there's definitely some brick in there. Yeah, it's kind of working, but it's not working great. And I think it's because the stuff has been baked on and has sat there for so many years, decades, most likely. After spraying, scrubbing, and rinsing about 10 times, this is the finished result. Now remember, this stuff had been on here. The soot was here probably for at least 30, 40 years, if not more. It's possible that it may never have been cleaned. We really don't know. But the house is 120 years old, and getting that off was no easy chore. But it is possible, and it does work if you just stay at it. Now, it's not going to look completely brand new. It never will. But it does look clean, and you can actually see the bricks there. So maybe if we took a TSP solution to it, that might clean it up a little bit better. But this fireplace is ready for restoration.
We've gotten a lot done off camera, and we've taken everything out that doesn't have to do with restoration or tools. Now these here are the woodworking tools that will go in the wood shop once we get that built. The storage rack over here, that is not organized yet because later this week we're going to be getting a second one, and we'll set them right here in the middle of the room so we can walk around them. Then we'll reorganize that much better, and all these boxes right here with the tools still in them, those will be put on the shelves. Now over here, we have the shovels and the rakes. That stuff is going to go over there where that rack is. And I put a pad under it so it's not going to do any damage to our wood floors. See how much space we have now that we've gotten all that stuff done? That's awesome. I did put a little Victorian touch in. Now that I can get to the closet in the tool room, I need to start cleaning it. I've already dusted it. I'm going to use some TSP and some hot water, wipe it all down, and then I can put the hats and the coats in here. So I'm using TSP to get all the dirt, the grime, the oils off of the paint and the wood. It works for either one, and it is great to use before you start painting as well, which we're not painting this. I would like to take the paint off, and since we're not going to see it very often except when we get a coat, it doesn't need painting. Be sure when you're using TSP to wear gloves and rinse it off with clean water when you're done. You can get all the residue off that way.
This is the room where spooky tales are told. It also happens to be our best bedroom upstairs. It's probably the most original. All the woodwork is old, it's dark, and it's never been painted. This is going to be our guest bedroom, so when people come to stay, this is where they'll stay, is this one right here. So Jeannie's asked me to do a couple of honeydew items, and let's swing that camera around and get started. Jeannie wants the plastic curtains taken down. Well, that window has seen better days. Look how ratty these window frames have gotten. So many years of being weather beaten and not maintained. You can see here where the window glazing has fallen off. This is a big problem all over the house, and we'll have to address that. Storm windows were installed in the house a long time ago, and we have problems with them. This one here has a ripped out screen. Others have broken glass. Here's a sash cord that's broken. I was working up here and the light caught the door just right, and I noticed some saw marks across here. These saw marks were made by a bandsaw, and normally when you do woodworking, you're going to take some sandpaper and you're going to run it across here and try to get those saw marks out. But the craftsmanship here indicates that these may be custom built on-site doors that were made by the craftsman who built this house. And then take a look right here. Here you can see circular saw marks. That was made by a circular saw, obviously, but they were never smoothed out. In fact, the whole door has a kind of a rough texture to it. Not quite rough sawn, but almost. The other interesting thing are the hand-cut mortise and tenon joints. Now here's an interesting question. Could this door be built today? And the answer is yes. We have access to the same tools that the old-timers had. In fact, we have access to tools that the old-timers didn't have. And we could build a door just like this, exactly the way they did back then, and have it turn out just exactly like this one did. So if we had to replicate something, we could certainly do that. Here's another 918 Lichtenberg patterned curtain. So I'll just get the rods set a little bit longer than what I need. Compress it, put it into place. And then we pull this out, like so. Spread it out, and then just kind of get the ruffles to where they look about the same across. It's more art than science, really. All right, there we go. There's one. Number two. Number three. This is the month of October, a month when there's a chill in the air, when leaves dry up and fall off, and then later go skittering down the street in the winds of October. It's also a month when scary stories begin to be told. And it's only fitting that since we live in a Victorian house, that we tell a tale from the Victorian era. After spending hours searching the web looking for the perfect ghost story, we came away disappointed, and so we decided to write one of our own. Tonight's tale, The Cabin. Arthur and Millie were newlyweds. The winter of 1873 had been long and cold, and they were glad to be starting their life together now that spring had come. After saying their goodbyes to friends and family, they set out in their wagon, leaving behind the growing city of Charleston and heading north to settle in Asheville. After leaving the city, the road quickly turned into a rutted, muddy mess, and the going was slow. Arthur struggled to keep the horses walking steady as they trudged along. After a few hours, the road began to dry out and became firm again, although it was rather bumpy. "What are you looking forward to most when we settle in our new home?" asked Arthur. "I'm looking forward to planting the seeds my mother gave me," replied Millie. "We'll have beans and squash and potatoes and cabbage. We'll have pickles to eat, corn on the cob, and sweet tomatoes." Arthur thought for a moment about how blessed he was to be married to this beautiful young lady. "Will you grow me some watermelon, sweet and juicy?" Arthur replied. Millie just smiled and said, "Of course." Arthur had recently graduated college with a degree in architecture. He thought back to the previous summer when he met Mr. Alfred Goldman of the Goldman Architectural Firm. Mr. Goldman had been a guest lecturer in one of the university's courses. After the lecture, Arthur made a point to speak to the architect about his favorite subject. After an hour of excited conversation, Mr. Goldman said, "Young man, when you graduate, I want you to write me because I believe you would make a fine apprentice." Arthur finished up his degree, and as promised, he sent a letter to Mr. Goldman stating that he had indeed finished college work. One day, a letter came in the mail from the Goldman Architectural Firm. Arthur was so excited that he could barely stand still. He ran a mile without stopping to the house where his beloved Millie lived. Arthur had been courting Millie for the past 2 years. Now that college was done, there was no more reason to wait. Arthur ran up the porch of the 3-story Victorian house and banged on the door in excitement. Millie's mother opened the door and exclaimed, "Young man, what are you so worked up about?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. LaForge," Arthur gasped. "I have to see Millie." A few minutes later, they were seated in the parlor, a typical Victorian room with a coal-burning fireplace, ornate woodwork, wallpaper, and fine furnishings. "What did you come to see me about in such a hurry?" said Millie. "My dear, I have here a letter from the Goldman architectural firm," replied Arthur. Well, what does it say?" Millie blurted out. Arthur took a deep breath and said, "I don't know, but I wanted you to be with me when I opened it up." She patted his hand and smiled. He hesitated and looked at the letter, pondering how his life might change once he laid eyes upon the written words within. "Arthur, what does it say?" Arthur was quickly jolted from his thoughts by Millie's question. Slowly, he peeled open the paper envelope, being careful not to ruin the wax seal. He pulled out the paper from within, and it read, "Dear Arthur, may we extend our sincerest congratulations to you on your recent college graduation. I have spoken with my colleagues at the firm, and we are of the opinion that you would make a fine apprentice with a bright future ahead. It would give us great pleasure if you would consider coming to Asheville to join the Goldman architectural firm this spring. You will be paid a fair wage and provided with a small cottage to live in for your first year. Sincerely, Alfred Goldman." Millie was so excited that she gave him a big hug. Millie's mother said, "Miss LaForge, where are your manners?" at the sudden display of affection. That night, Arthur asked Millie for her hand in marriage. The wagon wheel hit a rock, jolting Arthur out of his thoughts and back to the present. Millie asked him what he had on his mind that had him so occupied. He just smiled. They were now far from civilization, and they hadn't seen a soul in hours. The air was eerily still and quiet. The clouds grew heavy and dark as the light of day began to fade. The only sound was the clopping of horses' hooves and the creaking of the wooden wagon wheels. Arthur remarked how it was odd that there were no night sounds. Millie began to shiver as they rolled slowly down the old dirt road into the growing darkness. "Arthur, do you think we should stop for the night?" said Millie. "Soon. The old man back at the last crossroads said there's a small village ahead where we can stop." As the sky grew darker, a wind began to blow and the air became very cold. Arthur lit the lanterns, which cast an eerie light and shadows up ahead. Raindrops began to fall out of the sky, slowly at first, and then with more intensity. Millie silently wished they were back in Charleston in a cozy house with a coal fire on the grate. She quickly banished the thought, for now they were on their way to start a new life together, and in a few days they would arrive in Asheville. The wind picked up speed, and the rain came down harder with each passing minute. Arthur urged the horses to pick up the pace, hoping that the village would soon come into view. A brilliant flash lit up the sky, followed by a crack of thunder. The horses were clearly disturbed by this, as they made some noise up front. The blackened sky opened up and unleashed such a fury of rainfall, the likes of which one could not describe. One can only imagine how uncomfortable it was, soaked to the bone, chilled, and unable to escape the wrath of nature. The wind howled with gale force as debris from the forest began to hurl past them. In the darkness, the sounds of timber breaking made the couple fear what might happen next. Just then, the wind and the rain became so strong as if the entire landscape would be torn asunder. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light and a loud explosion as if dynamite had been detonated. The bolt of lightning struck a large old tree by the side of the road with such force that it was cleft in two. And then with a crash, the tree slammed down onto the muddy road, narrowly missing the horses by mere inches. Millie let out a scream. The wagon jolted to a stop, nearly ejecting the young couple. The shock of what had just happened made them pause for a minute before they realized they had nowhere to go. Over the fury of the wind and the rain, Millie shouted, "Look, through the trees, there's a light." Arthur jumped off the wagon and took Millie's hand. They abandoned the horses in the wagon and ran through the woods toward the distant light. They kept tripping over unseen obstacles, After an eternity, they found themselves on the porch of an old cabin, lantern light streaming through the small windows. Arthur knocked on the door. After a minute, a kindly-looking old man opened the door and beheld the sight of a young couple, completely drenched and shivering in the night air. The old man shouted over the wind, "What in tarnation are you two doing out here on a night like this?" They were too tired and cold to speak. "Well, come in out of the cold and let's get you dried out," the old man said. They went inside the cabin and were greeted with light and warmth that was wonderful beyond words. The old man introduced them to his wife, and she set about preparing a hot meal. Over the next few hours, the two couples became acquainted and shared many stories. Arthur and Millie very much enjoyed the hot meal and good conversation with their new friends. They talked and laughed late into the night, when at last the old couple excused themselves to retire for the evening. They showed Arthur and Millie to the small extra bedroom in the back of the cabin and bid them good night. In the wee hours, the storm calmed down and finally stopped. Exhausted from the previous night's terrors, Arthur and Millie slept in until they awoke to a brilliant sunny day. They dressed and came out to the kitchen where they had spent a jolly evening with their new friends the night before, but nobody seemed to be around. There was a hot breakfast on the table and a note which read, "It was good of you to stop by last night. Your horses have been made ready, and the tree has been dispatched. Godspeed to you on your journey." They looked around the cabin for the old couple, but nobody was there. Arthur said, "We must give them a token of our appreciation before we go." He laid a silver dollar on the table. Arthur and Millie gathered themselves and made their way back to the road, where they found the horses and wagon tied to a nearby tree. The big tree that had crashed down in the middle of the road was gone. "I don't understand," muttered Arthur. Millie remarked that the old man must be quite the woodsman. They untied the horses and mounted the wagon. The road was surprisingly dry considering the fury of the storm last evening. The horses pulled out onto the road once again. The bright sunshine was accompanied by warm air on this early spring day. It was hard to believe now what had happened the night before. They made their way down the road, and 20 minutes had passed when they came across a small village. Arthur pulled the team up to the general store, secured the horses, and went inside with his bride to buy a few supplies for the road. He was talking to the proprietor, and he told the story of what happened the night before. The proprietor listened intently but didn't say anything until Arthur was finished. He stood there and stared at the young man for a minute. He finally broke the silence. "Son, there are no houses back up that road for 40 miles. "Surely that can't be true," said Millie. "We were just there. We spent the night there." The proprietor turned to look at Millie and said, "I tell you the absolute truth. There are no houses up that road for 40 miles. Back outside, Arthur remarked that the proprietor was wrong, but it doesn't matter now. "What if we just imagined the whole thing?" said Millie. Arthur just looked at her and said, "That's not possible. We know what happened." "Arthur, I must know the truth. Let's go back and see the cabin, and then we'll know that he was wrong." Arthur was a little annoyed at the whole thing, but he agreed to drive back to the cabin just so his wife could have peace of mind. The horses pulled the wagon back up the road for about 20 minutes until they came to the spot where they had stopped the night before. They dismounted from the wagon and made their way through the forest to the cabin. As they entered the clearing, which now seemed a bit overgrown, their minds reeled as they saw not a cabin, but a stone foundation where the cabin should have been. They looked at each other in horror and disbelief, neither saying a word as the impossibility of the scene before them unfolded. They walked into the space inside the foundation. Chills gripped them and they became dizzy as they stood there looking down into the dirt. There lay an old piece of paper. On top of it was a shiny new silver dollar. Thank you for watching 1834 Restoration House.